Well, hello there, folks, and welcome to this webinar. It is my absolute pleasure and honor to be here with you today and in association with Skills Education, providing this webinar on essentially online facilitation skills to really make you the standout trainer and give you the advanced strategies for really showing up powerfully online with your online delivery. So, essentially, let's jump into the acknowledgement of country. And as Michelle said, we acknowledge the leaders, past, present, and future, where you are and where I am here on the Gold Coast, giving respect to the blah blah people there. So, my name is Mark Miles, and you may have seen me around the traps, but that is a photo of me, and I'm really excited to be here with you today. And some of you may know me from the TAE space, some of you may know me from the VEL conference, or the various places that we may have engaged. And I'm really excited to be with you here today because I'm going to share some stuff with you that's going to be quite revolutionary, quite distinct, and quite exciting, to be honest, because I don't know about you, but the whole transition to online delivery, I would have to say, was a little bit daunting in the very beginning and something I really struggle with, but something I'm really excited about right now. So today's session is going to be extremely engaging. So, get ready to respond in that chat box. And what I would love to do right now is if you could drop a yes in the chat, if you can hear me and see me, please. Please drop a yes, Y-E-S, in the chat box if you're going to hear me and see me, please. Excellent. We got those yeses coming through. And I really want to acknowledge every single one of you for coming along to today's webinar. It's going to definitely be worth your time and really hope that you take lots of notes as we go through it, right? So let's jump into our very first quick poll for today's event. So first question I've got there is, do you currently teach online? Yes or no? So if you could quickly respond to that one in the chat or via the poll, that's totally fine there. Do you currently teach yes or no? Excellent. Now, the next question I'd love to ask is, what platform do you currently teach on? Do you currently teach on Teams or on Zoom? How do you currently teach? Or is there another platform that you do use? Next question, third question is, do you typically teach live or recorded, synchronous or asynchronous? And I'm not fussed either way, but if you can just drop in a live, an L or an R for live or recorded there, that would be fantastic. Some people do live delivery and other people do recorded videos or content that they share, or maybe they even do both. And if you do both, drop a B in the chat. That would be fantastic. Awesome. Just going to wait for those responses to come through there. So great to see the variety of different things that people are doing there. So now let's jump into the overview of what we're going to cover in today's session. So first thing is we're going to cover the three core problems that most trainers face when delivering online. And you may be able to associate to the problems, maybe you face those problems as well. So next one is market forces and current trends in online delivery. Many of you would probably have experienced the big shift that I like to call it when COVID happened and the trajectory that I guess training took in the new reality that online training is not going away. It's here to stay. Next one is setting up the right environment for delivering online. Really, really important that we get that right. Next, building and maximizing engagement. Really, really, really important skill to be able to master and something to get our head around. And one thing that we always talk about is engagement. It's in your control. Engagement is something that you can develop and deploy quite easily when you know the science to it. It's never your audience's responsibility to be engaged. It's your responsibility to create that engagement. Just drop a yes in the chat if that kind of makes sense there for you. Anything is possible in regards to engagement, but we just need to set up the right environment. Drop a yes in the chat if that makes sense there for you. Fantastic. Now, next thing is mastering activities and breakout rooms like a pro. I'm going to be a little bit naughty in this section here. I'm going to say that a lot of people do make a lot of, I would say, errors and common mistakes in the areas of breakout rooms. And a lot of people take breakout rooms for granted, but we want to make sure that we set them up the right way. And my favorite part of all, secret tips to get over your self-consciousness on camera. And very, very cool last way to end up the session there is power phrases for delivering online. And I would say that if you can get your phrases, your communication really powerful when delivering online, brand new things really open up and new paradigms are possible when you're delivering online. Super exciting section there, right? So, and if we have time at the end there, we'll have a little bit of Q&A there as well. So if you've ever done something crazy like I have, and I actually Googled myself. So when I actually Googled myself, this is what came up. It was quite interesting. And I encourage you to do that as well. See what's out there on Google about you. But I found that apparently I am a Hollywood actor. There is a Mark Miles Hollywood actor. Very cool, very interesting there. But anyway, snapshot about me, just so that you know who I am and who's leading you on this journey here, folks. So, as many of you would know, I was born in Melbourne, grew up on the Gold Coast, lived in Japan for about 7 years. And over in Japan, taught English, had a great time doing that. And I really found my passion for teaching and supporting people developing language and communication skills. Came back to Australia, long story short, did my TAA and got very disappointed. I don't know about you, but when I went through my TAA, so to speak, I didn't really feel that I came out with essentially the skills, the knowledge, the structure to be able to really package up my information and deliver it in an engaging manner. I didn't really feel that I really learnt those skills, and I got a little bit frustrated. And I made a decision and I took some action. And I wanted to go out and I wanted to learn training at the deepest level possible. So I wanted to study things like psychology, motivation, accelerated learning. And I really got passionate about public speaking and presenting skills. Long story short, I've taught the TAE probably about over 500 times now over a 12-year period. And I've run public speaking workshops. And as you can see there on the screen, I've written a book called Creating Transformation. And I've released over about 250 YouTube videos to date. Basically, every Monday, I release a new video on essentially training skills or public speaking or any areas of communication there. But I would have to say that maybe like you, I really, really, really struggled. I really, really struggled going from face-to-face to online delivery. Drop a yes in the chat if you struggled in any way, shape, or form when COVID hit and you had some dramas or challenges that came up for you when you had to shift to online delivery. I don't know. Drop a yes in the chat if you can relate. But for me, whoa, I was really in that place of being petrified. I was petrified because I didn't know how I was going to take these face-to-face, wonderful, rah-rah, wonderful engagement skills to the online delivery space. And for me, I had a lot of embarrassing moments. I sent people to breakout rooms, but I forgot to push the button. No one ever actually went to the breakout room. Or I would say things, no one would respond, and I get crickets and all these different things. I'd have tech issues, and it was an absolute disaster when I very first began. But over time, again, I made a decision. I took some action and I looked at what were the other people in the marketplace doing? What were the Anthony Robbins of the world doing? What were the Benjamin Harveys of the world doing? What were all the gurus and the great presenters doing when they shifted to online delivery? And for me, it was all about modeling the greats. Everyone, can you drop an M for modeling into the chat box there for me, please? Drop an M for modeling into the chat. And I just thought, okay, what are the great people doing and how do I model exactly what they were doing? Because if they were getting great results, probably all I need to do is just copy what great people are doing. And as a result of copying some certain things, tweaking some things, and also coming up with my own style and noticing patterns in online delivery, I was able to get pretty good results. And I'll show you some of those results in a moment. But I was able to get some pretty good results. And now I'm absolutely loving it, to the degree that maybe even prefer online delivery to face-to-face. But I don't know. We won't go there yet. So couple of things that we want to set up for today, right? So protocols for today. Number one, participate fully. The more you respond, the more you play, the more you're going to have a great day. All right. Number two, phones on quiet. Naturally, I can't hear you well, but if you are able to be present, just turn off any distractions if you can. Number three, have fun. Absolutely want to have a lot of fun today. Number four, keep your video on if you can. Number five, keep yourself on mute unless you are sharing. Number six, ask questions by dropping a Q in the chat. And that'll tell me and tell Michelle that you've got a question, and we'll come to you at the very end there, right? So hold your questions till the end, but definitely make a note of it and drop it in the chat so that we've got a record of it there. Number seven, be willing to make mistakes and be vulnerable and share. Number eight, privacy and confidentiality. Anything that's stated in this webinar stays in this webinar or stays in the confines of the recording there. Number nine, stay hydrated. Number 10, take lots and lots of notes. And number 11, bonus thought there, keep an open mind and try before you judge. Try before you judge. That may be a good life point there as well, that ultimately you're going to come across a lot of new ideas here. And I want to encourage you, try it, see what happens, and then make your own judgment if you want to continue using it or not. Just drop a yes in the chat if you'd be willing to try before you judge. Drop a yes in the chat if you'd be willing to do that. Fantastic, folks. So let's have a moment to share your thoughts. What's been one of your biggest challenges when delivering online? So if you just drop in the note in the chat, has it been digital literacy of your attendees? Has it been your own internet connection? Has it been getting people to respond? Has it been getting people to turn up? I don't know. Drop in the chat. What's been one of your challenges that you've faced delivering online to date? And if you're not delivering online, just imagine you are and maybe drop in a potential thought that could come to mind there. Excellent. Excuse me for the coughing there. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really, really appreciate it. So over my time, I've found that the three core problems that most trainers face when delivering with online delivery are, number one, fear of technology and the camera and all the pieces around technology in general, using the functions, making mistakes, and all of that fun stuff. Number two, the fact that it is harder to create audience participation. Absolutely, we probably all agree with that because we just do not have the, environment or the oversee of people to be able to force engagement or force participation, so to speak. It is possible for people to sit back and do nothing, right? It is possible. Number three, it is harder to capture and hold audience attention while delivering. Okay. Drop a yes in the chat if you would agree that each of those could be a problem, or even one of those could be a problem that you would agree with. Drop a yes in the chat if you'd agree with one or all of those. Awesome. So now let's have a look at the market trends and the market forces. Well, the world of training has changed. Let's be honest, right? Prior to 2019, I lived in the bubble. I don't know, maybe you lived in the bubble as well, but the bubble was all about the idea that face-to-face training is the best thing. It's always going to be the best. There's never anything that's going to interrupt that bubble. But what happened? COVID. COVID happened and the bubble burst, right? And I need to, maybe like you, just accept a new reality that online training was here to stay, and online delivery, we're not going to get away from it. And ASQA did a study, and they did a report, ASQA Strategic Review of Online Learning, and you can definitely check out the report. It's very interesting to read it after everything that we've gone through. But in the report, they talked about pre-COVID, response to COVID, and beyond COVID. And I would say that we're now more so in the beyond COVID world, right? But in the report, they analyzed the changes that happened in basically in the vet sector in regards to online delivery. And they found, general comment in the report of the RTO surveyed 951 of them. Private RTOs went fully online. It went from 6.2% to 38%. Now, further to that, it broke down each of the training packages and 3% to 48%. And you can read that in your own time there. But basically, we are in a new inescapable reality. In the report, they talked about a lot of the difficulties going online and why some training packages would not go online in some way, shape, or form. But overall, you'd probably agree. Online delivery, it's here to stay. So we need to appreciate that. We need to accept that. But at the same time, there are some inherent challenges that must be recognized. Number one, digital literacy of you and your participants. That's a challenge. That's something that we don't really face so much in the face-to-face space. We got ways around that, right? But in the online environment, digital literacy, it is what it is, right? So you need to be able to support people and be able to make considerations. Number two, internet connection speed of you and your participants, critically important, right? And that was even mentioned as a big thing in the report. Number three, it is harder to read the room and control the individual learning environment for your participants, which is, right? That's one of the inherent challenges that we need to work around. And certainly through today's workshop and video, we're going to discuss some of these things and give you even more control and empowerment around that. Now, some of the myths about online delivery, right? So I'm going to gently nudge you into a new paradigm, right? First thing, people don't engage as much as when in a face-to-face session. Now, I would actually postulate that's a myth if you use the skills and knowledge that we're going to talk about today, okay? Because optimal engagement is possible, but we just need to set up the right environment for it. Next, myth. People are unwilling to sit in front of a computer for long periods of time, screen fatigue. Now, I would postulate a myth to a degree because if it's fun, if it's engaging, people will want to be there. Myth. You have to look good on camera to do a good job. Yeah, I do not look great on camera. I know that. I've got a lot of more makeup to put on. But I've just worked out that with the camera, there's some certain things that we can do that we can make ourselves feel even more comfortable, our audience feel even more comfortable and even more connected to who you are. And the more authentic you show up, the better the engagement and the better experience it is for your audience. Semi-truth. Digital literacy of the participants matter. Now, I would say absolutely it does. Absolutely does. But the thing is, once people get to a certain point, they can be trained during the experience as well, right? Now, if people can't save a document or can't do basic functions, we'll leave that to the side for a moment. But we do want to be aware that certain skills can be trained in the Zoom experience or in the training Teams experience. So we don't want to say a hard no to people joining. We need to appreciate some skills can be learnt in the moment. Semi-truth, practical tasks can't be done. Well, they can be done, but it's just a little bit more logistically harder because people may or may not have the equipment, camera stuff going on. Then, last one there, the learning experience isn't as good. Now, this is a semi-truth and a debatable truth, but I'm just going to pop that out there that yes, a lot can be achieved in online and a lot can be achieved in face-to-face. Face-to-face got its great advantages, but online, there's a lot of things that we think are impossible, but are actually possible, right? So we just want to park that idea of it's not as good as, and we may want to put that in the category of it can be as good as it needs to be, depending on your outcomes that you're looking to achieve there. So having said all of that, I just want to share some testimonials and some feedback that I've got based on the kind of approaches I use there. So the first list of testimonials here is more so focused on teams, all right? So I'll just leave that up there for you to read for just a moment. All right, so at first, I was very cautious about undertaking this course via Teams. However, Mark's approach has made me rethink about doing these types of courses face to face. This was an absolute pleasure to do, and the trainer made the difference. Very engaging, great personality. Well, thank you. And very knowledgeable. All right, so there's some great information there about Teams. And then looking over to Zoom, enjoyed the way you ran the course, mate. Initially, I thought you had drank way too much coffee. Haha. And as I've never come across an online trainer present the way you did. Very energetic. I soon learned that you were keeping us all engaged and I wasn't watching the clock. Now, that's the kind of feedback that you want to be getting from your participants there. It was very clear how you kept us engaged throughout using the chat bar so often and snuck in the reps on certain things to try and make it sink in for us, right? So I'm very humbled and happy to receive that kind of feedback. But ultimately, if we summarize it, they didn't get a chance to ever be distracted. That's probably a good thing. Love the breakout rooms. Great thing. Love the variety of tasks. Great thing. Love the fast pace and momentum. And that's something I'd really love to capture right in this moment. Everyone, can you drop an M for momentum in the chat box there for me, please? Drop an M for momentum. Faster you do that, faster we move on. Drop an M for momentum, please. Awesome. Okay, so what I want to introduce you to is a brand new paradigm. All right, this paradigm is a new way that we can present online, and I would say that there are two ways to present online. There is an active approach, and there is more of a passive approach. And I'm going to invite you to this active approach. And whether you take the active or the passive, it's kind of up to you and the context. But this active approach, it really helps you create maximum engagement. Your learners get hungry, they get on the edge of their seat and they want to know what's coming up and they get super excited to be part of the experience, right? So, three fundamentals in order to step into a new paradigm, right? So, number one, setting up the right environment to deliver effectively and master the camera. Really, really important. Second is building engagement and momentum. Again, there's that word. Number three, how to present like a pro with powerful phrases, right? The phrases make all of the difference. So, so let's jump into it. First one is setting up the right environment. Everyone, can you drop an E for environment into the chat box there for me? Once you do that, we'll move on. Drop an E for environment. Awesome. All right, so couple of things around environment. Ideally, you want to have two screens or three. Everyone, can you drop a 1, 2, 3, 4 or more in the chat? Let me know how many screens do you typically present with, right? Awesome. So as you can see there on the screen, I typically have two. I have my notes holder. And in regards to where to look, ideally you want to be looking at the middle of the screen there. Just the way that the camera lens is normally set up in your laptop, it's going to be capturing your eyesight. You want to be looking in the middle there. And even if you're moving around, you want to be keeping your eyes on the middle of the screen. Ideally, elevate your laptop. And ideally, if you can present standing up, you're going to bring a lot more energy, excitement, and people are going to feel your active presence there. Ideally, have a headset with a microphone because it allows you to move around, be expressive. You can also have a lapel mic if you want to. And ideally, use the Crisp app. Drop a yes or a no in the chat if you've ever heard of the Crisp app. Drop a yes or a no in the chat if you've ever heard of the Crisp app. All right, it's a fantastic app, and basically it cuts out all the background noise so people don't hear the cats and the dogs in the background there. Really great one, and it's quite cheap. You can get it online there, Crisp app, if you want to check it out. So that's all about setting up the right environment. And I've just found number one thing, if you can present standing up, it makes all of the difference there. All right. So, next, setting up the right environment for your participants. So, first thing I've said there is 0 pre-course comms, right? Now, that may seem a little bit unusual, but you want to set up the right expectations and the right mindset or expectation for your participants before they come along, right? So, what I recommend to people is actually have a list of questions that you insist people answer before they come along. Like question one, have you ever attended an online course before? Another question could be, do you have Word on your computer? What else? Have you ever delivered a course online before? Have you ever used Zoom or Teams before, right? So you want to get all this information, and this information is going to help you judge the digital literacy of your learners before they even come along and help you flag it before it's too late. All right. Number one, there is set of ground rules at the start of your session. So you want to be thinking about getting everybody to commit to participating fully, how to keep themselves on mute, videos on how to ask questions, and all of those critical things for protocol. And we'll talk about getting further into protocol in a moment. But one thing we highly recommend that you do is allow typos, encourage mistakes, know that it's going to be a safe learning environment for everybody. Now, next number two is limit your numbers depending on your intention. Ideally, keep your numbers around 15 to 20. Anything more than 20, it can be harder to capture everybody's progress, so to speak. But it all comes back to your intention. Number three, create regular breaks more often than you would face to face, right? So generally, we like to think about a break every 35, 40 minutes. Anything more than that, you're kind of pushing people's screen fatigue there, and people can only tolerate as long as their bottom can put up with there, right? And then number four is build rapport by making some acknowledgement or actually pointing out something that's in the background of the learner, right? So something I absolutely love to do is, I'll say a comment like, love the painting behind where you're sitting there, or wow, you've got a great setup, or whatever it may be. And really just give people compliments about the environment that they're bringing to the learning environment. It really makes people feel good when you do that. What I'd love to do before we go any further, can you drop a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the chat? Let me know which of these comments has really stood out to you, and which has like been an idea. It's like, maybe I could think about that even more going forward. Drop in the chat 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. What you got? Drop in the chat for me, play. Awesome. All right, fantastic. So now let's have a chat about confidence on camera. Now, I would have to say that this was one of the scariest things for me, because when I first started out, I was petrified of the camera. Oh my gosh, what will it see in me? What's going to highlight? I'm not photogenic at all, but I actually did. I have to admit, I went off to a confidence on camera course, and it was delivered by a Channel 9 presenter. And that's where I really wanted to get over my fear of the camera, right? Having said that, you don't need to go off to and do a course. I'm going to give you a couple of tips on how you can build your confidence on camera. So, first one, number one, don't look at the people, look at the lens in the middle of the screen. Now, that's a bit of an unusual thing to say, but when you have maybe 5, 10, 20 people and you're trying to look at everyone, what you often find is that you look at no one, right? So what we recommend and encourage everyone to do is really zone in on the middle of the screen there, and that's actually going to make them feel like they are connected to you and you are connected to them. So you want to be looking at the middle of the screen or to the camera, but it just depends on where your camera is angled, so to speak, right? So all your attention should be on the middle of the screen or wherever your camera is, right? Don't be looking at the people, because your eyes will be going off in different directions there. Number two is imagine you are talking to your best friend. Now, my camera is actually called Ben. My best friend's name is Ben. My dog's called Ben, and my best friend's called Ben. So everyone, you're Ben today. And number three there is cover over the people if you are self-conscious. So one thing you can do, the screen or the gallery, you can actually move that aside and you can not worry about looking at the people. You can just continue looking at the middle of the screen. They won't even know that you're not looking at them, which is super exciting, right? So it allows you to be present. If you're just looking at the middle of the screen and they will feel connected to you, you're going to feel connected to them. All right. So there's some camera tips for you. Look in the middle, best friend, and move the people if you want to. All right. So on that note, time to share your thoughts. What was something I've said about the camera side of things that really stood out to you? Drop in the chat. What was it something I said? Was it the best friend? Was it where to look? Was it moving the people? What was it for you? Drop in the chat. And all about the confidence on camera. Awesome. Alrighty, folks. So we're going to jump into the second portion here, which is building and maximizing engagement. Now, as I said earlier on today, one of the big mistakes that we often fall into as trainers is we think it is the trainee's job or responsibility to be engaged. And when I first started out, I really struggled. Like, how do I get people to actually answer questions? How do I get them to want to be involved? Then eventually I had the aha moment. It was actually on me. It's actually my job through how I structure things to get the maximum engagement. So I started to look at the whole science of engagement, actually what creates it. And in order to do that, I just looked at the idea of boredom. How do we create boredom in individuals and what leads to boredom? And then I reversed engineered it. All right. So let's jump into it. The fundamentals of the science of engagement. And I'd love you to write this down because if you can get this, everything will transform for you. So ultimately, the brain is a prediction machine. Everyone drop a P for prediction into the chat box there for me, please. Drop a P for prediction. You see, when we appreciate that the job of the brain, it's actually got 6 jobs, but one of the things that we're going to talk about today is the brain loves to predict what's going to happen. And when it can predict, it feels even more in control and all of that. But there is a certain formula to build engagement. What is it? Well, as you may think, or as you may probably appreciate, R probably stands for relevance. Relevance, right? So if it's not relevant, people are probably not going to be engaged. Now, what do you think the V might be? What do you think the V might be? Like, what do you think might lead to engagement there? Relevance plus what, folks? Excellent variety, like different types of things and changes. And then S. S is one of my favorite things to think about, to talk about, and to preach about. S. S is the thing that drives everything in entertainment. And it's the thing that keeps people on the edge of their seat. It is suspense. Absolutely. The 3 things that drive all engagement are relevance plus variety plus suspense equals active engagement. You may want to take a photograph of that or at least write that down. But this is the science to everything that we do in the world of training and assessing. And in the sense that if those things are not covered, well, you're not going to have active engagement. So how do we actually build that into an online session? Well, first of all, you want to create momentum fast and keep it going throughout your session. And that's why, as quick as possible, as early as possible, you want to get people responding in that chat box. Drop a yes in the chat if you can hear me and see me. You know, you want to be leading in with those phrases so people get engaged, they get trained to respond. Next, you want to use a variety of methods of delivery of information: whiteboards, breakout rooms, quiz questions, timed activities, research tasks, slides with suspense. And we're going to talk about how to do that in just a moment. Timeframes of tasks and breakout rooms. And you want to be looking to speed things up even more, knowing that people are going to disengage even faster in the online world, right? Drop a yes in the chat if you would agree that these days attention span's getting lower and lower. Drop a yes in the chat if you would agree with that. Excellent. All right, so we need to work with that, not against it. So momentum is your best friend. Momentum is your best friend. So let's jump into, well, how can we structure our slides to build even more engagement? Well, not hard, but we need to come to the crux of suspense. We need to build that suspense into our sessions there. So let's check out, how can we do that? Well, this is an original slide, so empowering beliefs for presenting. Empowering beliefs, all right? So you can read through those if you want to. But more importantly, let's look at a way that we could make that even more engaging. Let's take it out. So modified, we can actually take out the core words and we can deliver it in an engaging manner with people wondering what's going to fill in those blanks there. Something so simplistic, yet can make such a massive, massive, massive difference. All right. So another style, what could we do? Well, we got 3 core things that we're looking to teach there. 3 pillars of successful presentation: rapport, engagement, retention, something I talk about a lot. How can we make that even more suspenseful? Well, we could do something like that. Just put in the first letter of the 3 words there. All right. Or another way to do it is we blank out the last word there, rapport, engagement, and people are guessing what the last word is there. Now, again, very, 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 very simplistic thing, yet it can make all the difference, right? Amateurs will look to think, how much can I put on the slides? Pros think about what can I take out to create even more engagement. Drop a yes in the chat if that's making sense there for you, right? Drop a yes in the chat if this whole concept of suspense is landing with you. Excellent. So now earlier today, we talked about the importance of momentum. Now, also, we talked about variety. And one of the things that we love to do with variety is build in breakout rooms, because breakout rooms break up essentially how the learning is going to take place. And many of you probably have been part of a breakout room before, but essentially it's the situation of being put into pairs or group work in the online context or paradigm here. Now, what we often find though is that people make mistakes with breakout rooms and don't do them as efficiently as they could be done. So let's look at some tips for really mastering breakout rooms. So number one, use strict time frames. What we need to appreciate is that people will zone out very quickly, but if you can make your time frame shorter and sharper, time your activities to 1 to 4 minutes or 1 to 3 minutes, or even short bursts of activities in the breakout rooms, you're going to be even more successful in capturing and holding people's attention. Next one, ideally move people around and pair them up based on efficiency, but also move them into different groups each time they're doing new activities. Creates variety. Next, and always manually create the rooms unless you have more than 12 people in the room, in the group, so to speak. Number three, notice the microphones and let people know that you can see what's going on. But generally, we say there's no need to go into the room and listen to people because it makes people feel a little bit uncomfortable. Number five, do an icebreaker in a breakout room as early as possible at the start of the session. Now, what I mean by this is, within the first 30 minutes of your session, ideally, pop people into a breakout room, get them used to going into the room, and get them used to being in that paradigm or that environment, so that it's not till so you don't have a situation where it's day two and they're going into their very first breakout room. Number six, tell them, show them what is expected of them in the room. Now, the reason I say this is many times people can end up in a breakout room, but they're a little bit unsure about what's exactly required of them. So what does that mean? Sounds like, okay, folks, we're about to jump into a breakout room, and I would like you to do X, Y, Z. And a good performance would sound like blah, 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 right? And you actually paint out what would sound like good performance. If they're doing a role play, stimulate the role play before they go in. If they're doing a public speaking exercise, make sure that you model it before they go into the room, right? Make sure they've got absolute clarity before they go in. All right. The last thing you want is confusion in the room, because it goes pear-shaped very quickly, right? So you want clarity before they go in. All right. So types of activities you can do in a breakout room. Well, we've got things like list activities, research task, pair work, group task, practical task, watch a video, then learners debrief. All these great things are possible, and I'm sure you've got your own ideas and lots of different things that you do in breakout rooms. But key things to think about: time frame, keep it shorter, less people, and make sure that you set the right expectations. All right. Go ahead, drop a comment in the chat. What's been something that we've covered so far with breakout rooms that's really stood out to you? Drop in the chat. What's one thing I've covered so far with breakout rooms that's really stood out to you? Excellent. All right. So let's wrap up this section on engagement. Momentum is everything. Create and build suspense. Create and build suspense. Okay. So just so that we lock in those ideas there, everyone drop an MS in the chat box there for me. Let's lock in momentum and suspense. Momentum and suspense. All right, so now let's jump into one of my favorite sections of all time: power presenting phrases and making the chat box your best friend. Now, before we go into it, though, we need to ask ourselves, should you be an active presenter or a passive presenter? Now, as we've got here on the slide, different contexts will call for different approaches. So you just need to think about your environment and your intention and think about, okay, what would be appropriate? Having said that, group management is a really, really, really important skill and thing to think about. So let's think about some ways that we could get group management going really well. And I would say that based on my experience, the best way to do that is the chat box, right? So let's look at some ways that we can get people to respond in the chat box. Now, one thing to keep in mind is you never ever want to move on before everybody's responded. All right. So that's the key thing to keep in mind. Let's jump into it. So some ways that I love to use the chat box is drop a yes in the chat if you can hear me and see me. All right. Something I love to lead with in the very beginning. Next one, drop, type, write a P for present. So once people come back from breaks, you can say drop a P if you are present, just so that you know that everybody's ready to go. Drop a Q for question. So if anytime someone's got a question, I'll say, all right, everyone, if you've got a question, drop a Q for question, and then I'll come over to you and I'll get them to unmute themselves. They can ask their question. That way you're not getting people randomly unmuting themselves and say, oh, yeah, it can be a little bit disdaunting if that's a word. R for ready. If you're ready for the next thing, drop an R in the chat. D for done. If you're done on the last task, drop a D. Drop a smiley face for whatever it may be. Drop a V for value. If you got value from the last section, drop a V for value. Drop a C for comment. If you got a comment you want to make, drop a C, and I'll come over to you. And T for time. So if you ever need more time, just drop a T in the chat, and I will spend a few more moments on that task that we were just doing there, right? Now, do I tell people that this is the index or how the key of how we're going to get people to respond? No, but generally, as I go through the session, people will get used to responding in this way. So I'll say, if you're ready for the next thing, drop an R in the chat, right? And people will just follow the commands, so to speak. Okay. So really, really powerful. And you can get as crazy or as creative as you want with these responsive commands there. Now, next thing you want to look at is power phrases for content control. So just be aware that you will get a copy of these slides at the very end. So if we're going too far, just be aware you will get a copy, which is super exciting. Power phrases, if you can see my screen, type yes in the chat. Never, ever assume. If you can hear the video, type yes in the chat. Really important to check. Just so I know that you got that, type X in the chat box. Just so I know that you got that, type S for safety in the chat box. Just so I know that you got that, type R for attention in the chat. Before I move on, let me check in. Before I move on, let me check in. One of my favorite phrases to use. Before I move on, let me check in. What's the name of the national vet regulator for the vet sector? Right, it's just a random example, but before I move on, let me check in. Before I move on, let me check in. What's one of the most important things for engagement in training? Absolutely suspense, right? Now, here's some more phrases for you. Would you agree that? All right. Would you agree that safety is critical? All right. Drop a yes in the chat if you would agree that. Does that make sense? Drop an R in the chat if you can relate to blah, blah. Would it be the case that blah, blah? Drop a me in the chat if you have ever had the situation of blah. Next, grab a pen and write this down. One of my favorite phrases. Just so I know that you got that, type in the chat. Just so I know that you got that, type rapport in the chat box. What were those three things? And you get people to respond. Drop an R for ready if you're ready for the next item. Drop a D for done if you're done on that task. Number 6, drop in the chat what was your biggest insight, discovery, or takeaway from the last section there. Okay, so all of these phrases are so powerful. When you step into the world of using them, you get people engaged, hooked, and responsive to everything you are doing. But the, I guess, big closing comment, though, is you don't move on until people have responded. You don't move on until you've got everybody's D for done on the task, right? And once you set up that paradigm, people are like, okay, he's not going to move on until I've responded, right? And that creates a great team atmosphere. So Things to remember when using power phrases: vary it up. You don't want to be using the same phrase the whole time. Set the expectations early on. As I said, get them to drop a Q in the chat if you've got a question, T for time. Don't move on until everybody has responded. And then the last part there is keep everybody on mute unless people are sharing, and remind people of the protocols and lead by, you can probably imagine, example. So essentially, what have we covered today? Well, we've covered getting your environment right, getting your engagement happening on demand with a new paradigm of interaction with the chat box and with great phrases. And we looked at getting your confidence up with new phrases and strategies to use with your participants, and ultimately confidence on camera and being the most powerful presenter that you can be, so that everybody wants to be part of your experience there. So on that note, folks, Michelle, if people have got any questions at all, feel free to direct them my way, or let me know what's come up for people. I would love to hear from some people. If Michelle, you want to read out some questions, that would be great. Excellent. That's a great question. Really, really love that one. And definitely, I would just recommend doing blah blah blah. Fantastic. All right, so that is our session, folks. So again, that's a bit of details about me, and you can definitely check out my book on Amazon. We've got some giveaways for you today. We've got a handout with the presenting phrases. I've got a copy of my 11 learning activities that actively engage learners and tap into the executive function of the learner's mind. And you can also pre-order a copy of my new book coming in 2025, Creating Transformation in the Online World, Advanced Facilitation Skills for Online Delivery. So you can definitely send through your expression of interest for that. And then just want to say a huge thank you to everybody for coming along and being part of today's session. Hopefully you got some value from the session, and you have got something that you'll be able to walk away and share with other people and deploy, and enjoy the results you get from that. My name is Mark Miles. Thank you so much to Michelle and Skills Education for putting this on, and thank you for having me as part of the experience and part of your day. On that note, folks, thank you so much, and look forward to seeing you in the future there.